Subscribe to Wild West Soul Stories. Hit the bell, like, comment, and share. Thanks for watching. The dust settled on the dirt road leading to Thornwood Ranch as the afternoon sun blazed overhead. Samuel Garrett wiped the sweat from his brow and leaned against the wooden fence post, watching his horses graze in the golden fields. 32 years old, and already he felt like an old man, worn down by seasons of drought, by loneliness, by the weight of running a ranch that had belonged to 3 generations of Garretts before him. He had everything a man could want on paper: 200 acres of good land, strong horses, loyal ranch hands, a sturdy house with a wraparound porch that caught the evening breeze. But the house was empty, and the silence inside those walls grew heavier with each passing year. His mother had passed when he was 20. His father followed 5 years later, leaving Samuel with nothing but land and memories. He had courted a woman once, a school teacher from town named Rebecca, but she had grown tired of waiting for a man who seemed married to his work. She left for San Francisco 3 springs ago, and Samuel had not opened his heart to anyone since. He was pulling a splinter from his palm when he heard footsteps approaching. Looking up, he saw a figure walking slowly down the dirt path toward his ranch. The figure was small, moving with a slight limp, and as it drew closer, Samuel realized it was a woman. She wore a faded blue dress that had clearly seen better days. Her boots were caked with mud, and her dark hair hung in loose waves around her shoulders, escaping from what had once been a neat braid. She carried nothing but a small cloth bag clutched against her chest, and even from a distance, Samuel could see the exhaustion in her posture. He straightened up and walked toward the gate, curiosity mixing with concern. Strangers did not often walk down this road. The nearest town was 8 miles away, and the terrain between here and there was unforgiving. The woman stopped a few feet from the gate. Her eyes, a deep shade of brown, met his with a mixture of hope and fear. She was young, perhaps 25 or 26, and despite the dirt on her face and the weariness in her expression, there was something striking about her, something that made Samuel's heart skip unexpectedly. She spoke first, her voice soft but steady. "Mister, I know I look like trouble walking, but I promise you I am not. I have been traveling for 3 days, and I am looking for work. Any kind of work. I can cook, I can clean, I can mend clothes and tend to animals. I am not asking for charity, I am asking for a chance." Samuel studied her for a long moment. He had hired drifters before, men looking for temporary work during roundup season, but he had never had a woman appear at his gate, looking like she had walked through fire to get there. "Where are you coming from?" he asked. The woman hesitated, and in that hesitation, Samuel saw something flicker in her eyes. Pain, maybe, or fear. She swallowed hard before answering. "I come from a place I cannot go back to. That is all I can say right now. But I give you my word, mister. I am honest. I work hard, and I will not bring any trouble to your door." Samuel glanced down at her boots, then back at her face. She was trembling slightly, whether from hunger or exhaustion or something else he could not tell. Every instinct told him to be cautious. A woman traveling alone with no belongings and no explanation was a mystery, and mysteries often led to complications. But there was something in her eyes that stopped him from turning her away, a quiet dignity beneath the desperation, a strength that seemed to burn even when everything else had been stripped away. "What is your name?" he asked. "Josephine," she said. "Josephine Wilder." Samuel opened the gate. "Come inside, Miss Wilder. You look like you could use a meal and some rest. We can talk about work after you have eaten something." The relief that washed over Josephine's face was so profound that Samuel felt it in his own chest. She whispered a thank you so quiet he almost missed it, then followed him up the path toward the house. Inside, Samuel's housekeeper, an older woman named Mabel who came 3 times a week from town, was preparing supper. She raised her eyebrows when Samuel walked in with a ragged stranger, but she asked no questions. She simply set another plate at the table and ladled out an extra portion of stew. Josephine ate slowly, as if she had not seen food in days. Samuel sat across from her, sipping coffee and watching her in silence. When she finished, she looked up at him with tears glistening in her eyes. "I cannot tell you how much this means," she said. "I thought I might not make it here. I thought I might collapse on that road and never get up again." "How long since you last ate?" Samuel asked. Josephine looked away. "2 days," she admitted. "I had a little bread, but it ran out. I drank from streams when I could find them." Samuel felt something tighten in his chest. Whatever had driven this woman to walk for days without food, it must have been something terrible, and yet she had not given up. She had kept walking until she found someone who might help her. He made a decision then, one that surprised even himself. "I could use help around here," he said. "Mabel comes when she can, but the house needs more looking after than I have time to give it. If you are willing to cook and clean and help with whatever needs doing, I will give you room and board and fair wages. You can stay in the guest room on the 2nd floor. It is not much, but it is warm and dry." Josephine stared at him as if she could not believe what she was hearing. "You would do that for me?" she asked. "You do not even know me." "I know enough," Samuel said. "I know you walked 3 days on an empty stomach to ask a stranger for honest work. That tells me something about who you are." Josephine pressed her hand to her mouth, and a single tear slipped down her cheek. "Thank you," she whispered. "You will not regret this. I promise you that." Over the following weeks, Josephine proved true to her word. She threw herself into her work with a dedication that impressed everyone on the ranch. She rose before dawn to prepare breakfast for Samuel and his 3 ranch hands. She scrubbed floors and washed linens and mended clothes that had been torn and forgotten for months. She learned to feed the chickens and collect eggs without being pecked. She even began helping Mabel with the gardening, coaxing vegetables from the stubborn soil with patience and care. But what surprised Samuel most was her presence in the house. For years, the rooms had felt hollow, echoing with absence. Now there was warmth. There was the smell of fresh bread in the mornings. There was laughter when Josephine told stories to Mabel, and soft humming when she worked alone in the kitchen. Samuel found himself lingering at breakfast, making excuses to come inside during the day, sitting on the porch in the evenings, when Josephine sat there watching the sunset. They talked about small things at first, the weather, the horses, the history of the ranch, but slowly their conversations grew deeper. One evening, as the sky turned pink and gold, Josephine told him about her childhood. She had grown up on a farm in Kansas, the youngest of 4 children. Her parents had died when she was 16, and her older siblings had scattered. She had worked as a seamstress, then as a housekeeper, moving from town to town in search of stability. Samuel shared pieces of his own story in return. The pressure of inheriting the ranch so young, the loneliness that came with responsibility, the way he sometimes felt more like a caretaker than a person with a life of his own. They understood each other in a way that neither had expected, and with each passing day, Samuel felt something growing in his heart, something he had not felt in years, something that scared him and thrilled him in equal measure. But Josephine still carried shadows. There were nights when Samuel heard her crying through the walls. There were moments when she would freeze at a sudden noise, her eyes going distant and afraid. He did not press her for answers. He trusted that she would tell him when she was ready. That moment came on a cool autumn evening, 6 weeks after her arrival. They were sitting on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the chill, when Josephine finally spoke. "I should tell you the truth," she said quietly. "About where I came from, about why I was running." Samuel turned to face her. "Only if you want to," he said. "I have not asked because I did not want to push you." Josephine took a deep breath. "I was married," she said, "to a man named Harold Foster. He was charming when I met him, kind. Everyone in town thought he was wonderful. But behind closed doors, he was cruel. He controlled everything I did, who I spoke to, where I went, what I wore, and when I tried to stand up for myself, he would remind me that I was his property, that I belonged to him. Samuel's hands clenched into fists, but he stayed silent, letting her continue. One night I found the strength to leave. I waited until he went to town, and I packed what little I could carry. I walked through the night, then the next day, then the next. I knew he would come looking for me. I knew he would be angry, so I kept walking until I could not walk anymore. And that is when I found your gate. Her voice broke on the last word, and she pressed her hand to her eyes. Samuel moved closer to her on the bench. He did not touch her, not yet, but he let his presence speak for him. Let her know that she was safe. You are not his property, Samuel said firmly. You are not anyone's property. You are a person, Josephine. A strong, brave, remarkable person. And as long as you are on this ranch, no one will harm you. I give you my word. Josephine looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. Why are you so kind to me? She asked. You barely know me. Samuel hesitated, then spoke the truth that had been building in his heart for weeks. Because from the moment you walked up that road, something changed in me, he said. You brought light into this house, into my life. I had forgotten what it felt like to care about someone, to want someone to be happy. But you reminded me, and I am grateful for that, Josephine. More grateful than I can say. Josephine stared at him, her lips parted in surprise. Are you saying what I think you are saying? She whispered. I am saying that I have feelings for you, Samuel admitted. Strong feelings. I know you have been through something terrible. I know you need time to heal, and I will wait as long as you need me to wait. But I wanted you to know the truth. For a long moment, Josephine said nothing. Then she reached out and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. I have feelings for you too, she said softly. I have been afraid to admit it, afraid that I was being foolish, afraid that someone like you could never care for someone as broken as me. You are not broken, Samuel said fiercely. You are surviving. And there is nothing more beautiful than that. They sat together in silence as the stars emerged overhead, their hands intertwined, their hearts beating in quiet harmony. The months that followed were the happiest of Samuel's life. He and Josephine grew closer with each passing day, their love deepening like roots finding water in dry soil. He courted her properly, bringing her wildflowers from fields and reading poetry to her by lamplight. She baked him his favorite apple pie and taught him to dance in the living room when no one was watching. The ranch hands noticed the change in their boss. He smiled more. He laughed more. He was more patient with the horses and more generous with his praise. Even Mabel remarked that she had never seen him so content. One spring morning, a year after Josephine had first appeared at his gate, Samuel woke before dawn and walked to the hill overlooking the ranch. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of rose and amber. Josephine joined him a few minutes later, wrapping her shawl around her shoulders. You are up early, she said. Samuel turned to face her. I have been thinking, he said, about the future, about us. Josephine tilted her head, curiosity in her eyes. And what you been thinking? Samuel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal a simple gold ring, the same ring his father had given his mother 50 years ago. I have been thinking that I do not want to spend another day without you as my wife, he said. Josephine Wilder, you walked into my life when I thought I had nothing left to give. You showed me that my heart was still capable of love. You made this house a home again. Will you marry me? Josephine's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of joy. She nodded, unable to speak, and Samuel slipped the ring onto her finger. They were married that summer in a small ceremony on the ranch, surrounded by the people who had become their family. The ranch hands stood witness. Mabel prepared the wedding feast, and the horses grazed peacefully in the background as Samuel and Josephine exchanged their vows. As Samuel kissed his bride for the first time, he thought about how different his life had been just a year ago. He had been lonely, lost, going through the motions of living without really feeling alive. And then a stranger had walked up his dusty road, desperate and exhausted, asking for nothing but a chance. He had given her that chance, and in return she had given him everything. That evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Josephine rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about how different things might have been?" she asked. "If I had taken a different road that day, if I had never found your ranch." Samuel kissed the top of her head. "I try not to," he said, "because I cannot imagine my life without you in it. You are my miracle, Josephine. You always will be." She lifted her face to his, and he saw in her eyes the same love that burned in his own heart. Whatever storms had brought her to him, whatever darkness lay in her past, they would face the future together, side by side, hand in hand. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fire and gold, Samuel Garrett knew that he had finally found what he had been searching for all along. Not just a partner, not just a wife, but a home for his heart, and he would spend the rest of his days making sure she knew just how much she was loved. The end.